Welcome to Beyond the Walls on September 25th of 2002. We have a special service today with the Canada East Mission Center President team with us, who are going to bring a word of hope to our global community. I would like to acknowledge those of you who are already saying hi on YouTube. So please do say hi, where you're joining us from, and let us know if there's someone watching with you at home participating in these services. Let us bring community together. And I want to acknowledge also Providence Bay congregation joining us today. If you are participating today from the congregation building or with your congregation, please do let us know. And here we go now to Woodfield, London congregation with Carol Smith for our prelude.
Carol. Greetings, one and all, and welcome to Beyond the Walls. I'm so happy to be joining you live from the sanctuary of Toronto Centre Place as I'm briefly home after our sojourn to the Restoration's historic Centre Place, spelled the American way, the auditorium and the temple at Community of Christ International Headquarters. My stay here in Canada is unfortunately brief, as I will be traveling to England and Wales next week to give the keynote address at the Sunstone United Kingdom Symposium and to visit with the saints in Britain. I'm very much looking forward to that trip. Yesterday, we celebrated the sacrament of the blessing of children for Piper Shirley Scriven, the daughter of Alexandra and Jacob Scriven. Many of you will know Alexandra as the Beyond the Walls Choir's soprano soloist for last year's Messiah Advent series. Piper is the third baby to be blessed in Toronto Centre Place, following upon the blessings of Faith Shannon and Chloe de Guzman-Pura, both of whom were born the very weekend we moved into this new facility. Our theme today is a word of hope. And there are a few things more hopeful than a new infant born to loving parents in sacred community. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verses 13 through 16, we read, "People were bringing children to Jesus in order that he might touch them, and the disciples spoke sternly to them. But when Jesus saw this, he was indignant. And he said to the disciples, 'Let the children come to me. Do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly, I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it.' And he took the children up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them." This story of Jesus serves as our model for the sacrament of the blessing of children. And while there are any number of spiritual practices that can be vital and meaningful in life, the blessing of children is among the 8 special spiritual practices set apart by Community of Christ as sacraments of the Church. These official sacraments are 1, the blessing of children, 2, baptism, 3, confirmation, 4, the Lord's Supper or communion, 5, the laying on of hands or administration, 6, the evangelist blessing, 7, ordination, and 8, marriage. Many of these mark moments in our cycles, in the cycles of our lives, allowing the community to celebrate the individual and to celebrate with the individual. As we begin our worship today, let us acknowledge the presence of the Holy Spirit among us, connecting us in this moment, wherever we may be in the world. Our call to worship is the first verse of Doctrine and Covenants, section 165. This is a long verse, but I want to read each one of it and have you listen again to each word. It begins, "Community of Christ, a divine vision is set before you, presented over the years through various inspired phrases and symbols, is expressed now through initiatives in harmony with Jesus Christ's mission. As a spiritual venture, boldly follow the initiatives into the heart of God's vision for the church and creation. Then, in response to growing insights about God's nature and will, continue to shape communities that live Christ's love and mission. Lovingly invite others to experience the good news of new life in community with Christ. Opportunities in your daily lives abound if you choose to see them. Undertake compassionate and just actions to abolish poverty and end needless suffering. Pursue peace on and for the earth. Let nothing separate you from this mission. It reveals divine intent for personal, societal, and environmental salvation, a fullness of gospel witness for creation's restoration. Continue to align your priorities with local and worldwide church efforts to move the initiatives forward. Additional innovative approaches to coordinating congregational life and supporting groups of disciples and seekers are needed to address mission opportunities in a changing world. Amen. And now I invite you to join with the Beyond the Walls Choir in singing hymn number 278, There's a Church Within Us.
There's a church within us, O Lord. There's a church within us, O Lord. Not a building, but a soul. Not a portion, but a whole. There's a church within us, O Lord. There's potential within us, O Lord. Something stirring within us, O Lord. Something straining to have birth, to be visible on earth. There's potential within us, O Lord. There's some building to be done, O Lord. There's some building to be done, O Lord. Not with steel, not with stone, but with lives which are our own. There's the church to be built, O Lord. There's the church within us, O Lord. There's the church within us, O Lord. Not a building, but one soul. Not a portion, but one whole. We are your church in the world.
Will you pray with me? God of community, we gather to reflect on the new shoots that have sprung forth in the field of your mission, to share our experiences and our insights, to further develop and hone our capacity to promote your mission in new and relevant and meaningful ways. We have heard your counsel to lovingly invite others to experience the good news in community. Countless opportunities abound in our daily lives when our perceptions are open to them. We ask that you remove the scales from our eyes, help us transcend our own limitations, to become aware of our ongoing bigotries within the church that have grown out of North American social and cultural norms, but continue to masquerade themselves in our minds as if they were your gospel. We have heard your counsel that additional innovative approaches to coordinating congregational life and supporting groups of disciples and seekers are needed to address mission opportunities in this changing world. We ask that you pour out your spirit of inspiration upon this circle of your disciples, that we may further your mission of building up the peaceable Commonwealth here in Canada and throughout the world. Help us also to be ever mindful of what matters most, the spiritual and institutional inheritance from those who have gone before, and be our guide as we attempt to continue the work that they set in motion by spending our time and resources in productive mission. Be with us as we seek to replant the seeds in this fertile soil to generate a harvest of renewal of your community. May the spirit of discernment infuse our hearts and minds and words this day. These things we pray in sacred community. Amen. Amidst the joy we have shared in celebration this weekend, we should nevertheless observe that 3 baby blessings in 7 years is not a high rate for the congregation, at least as compared to the 1940s or the 1950s, when we may have celebrated as many as a dozen or more baby blessings in a single year. The truth is that in the past 70 years, this congregation, Community of Christ in Canada as a whole, and indeed all of Christianity in the developed world, has experienced a steep demographic decline. My own analysis of this trend as a historian, I see several causes. The first of these is beyond our control. The truth is that in the 21st century, people have innumerable distractions that occupy their time and attention. Entertainment options today are enormous, from the multitude of the on-demand streaming television services to the video game industry, which has expanded year after year and is now a $190 billion annual year industry, to professional sports, social media, and more and more and more. That market competition for eyeballs simply did not exist at the congregation's height in the 1950s. Indeed, the church was actually given a preferential monopoly on Sundays by government legislatures that banned competition, indeed even including shopping. Therefore, like any local industry in a small country that is protected by national tariffs, that industry can be decimated by international competition when those tariffs are removed. So too, churches, which had grown dependent on that artificial subsidy, in other words, having no competition on Sunday, have suffered when that subsidy was eliminated. That said, I don't think we have done enough in Community of Christ to consider what it really means to compete in this new reality. My father is an evangelical Christian, and while I was with Mike on our recent trip to the States, I was able to visit my parents and my brother and my two of my sisters and their families in Minnesota for the first time since the pandemic closed the border. So on the Sunday we were there, I attended my father's evangelical megachurch, which has been the fastest growing church in Minnesota. From a technical and a competitive entertainment perspective, I have to say that the megachurch's show was impressive. The sanctuary is a large, modern amphitheater ringed with stage lighting and cameras. There was a light show backing up the live in-house Christian contemporary band. I stood up and took a snapshot of this. And there was a giant video monitors that cycled a video feed that are drawn from half a dozen cameras around the sanctuary. All of the music and speakers were rehearsed and precisely timed. So this isn't anything new. In fact, this is a formula that has been followed among evangelical megachurches for, let's say, 30 or 40 years. So then when I went to Independence myself soon afterwards, and we had our meetup here when we rented Woods Chapel, I wondered, how is it possible that none of the dozens of Community of Christ congregations in the area around headquarters had, to my knowledge anyway, successfully experimented with attempting to professionalize the framework of their service? In theory, anyway, to my thinking, such a ministry could grow and within a decade or two potentially fill the auditorium. We already have the basic infrastructure, this amazing facility that sits empty, let's say 2-3 years out of, anyway, except for a couple of weeks every World Conference. In our own way, as a live stream service, we have attempted to compete in the reality of the 21st century marketplace. So while most of our speakers from all around the world are not professional, and indeed our presenters are almost exclusively drawn from people who regularly view the service, we have teams of volunteers who help everyone achieve professionalism and present themselves their best selves in their presentation. All of the text, for example, for Beyond the Walls is due on the Monday 6 days before the service goes live. Each presenter is given our technical guidelines document, and our content team works with everyone to make sure their part is within the correct word count limit, and we often help authors edit for clarity and focus. The text then goes to the translation team, who renders it in each of our 3 core languages. When the text is finalized, hundreds of slides are produced each week, pairing the words with appropriate images. Our production and technology team helps make sure each presenter is comfortable with the technology. So for example, there's a rehearsal that happens each Saturday, and they ask, how is your lighting? Are you in the middle of your camera? Are you kind of off to the side? What are you reading from? Can we hear you clearly? We gather again in the ministers' meeting a half an hour prior to the service for a second run-through, when we are joined by our chaplain, who also helps each of us prepare spiritually. In the service itself, our technology teams switch between the cameras and take charge of muting and unmuting. Meanwhile, our social media teams are shepherding engagement in the comments on YouTube and Facebook, welcoming and supporting everyone joining us from around the world. And of course, the process for producing the music, both Mike's ministry in the Prelude and Postlude, and Leandro's direction of the Beyond the Walls choir, including mixing together 40 or 80 individual voices, is an even lengthier process. There is no question that a lot goes into this service each week. And I am so grateful to everyone whose effort makes this possible. And we are gratified that these efforts at housing meaningful worship within a professional setting have had such remarkable results. So people from over 100 different nations have engaged our Sunday services by commenting on, liking, or sharing the video. Since 2020, 397 individuals have served either as on-screen ministers, this is unique individuals, have served either as on-screen ministers or as one of the behind-the-scenes support teams that I've mentioned. In that same time, 168 unique individuals have shared their voice with the Beyond the Walls choir, which has recorded 154 hymns. We're also thankful that 508 unique households have made donations in support of Beyond the Walls, not counting anonymous contributors. So distractions are ubiquitous, and in the 21st century, competition for eyeballs and attention is very real indeed. We have the ability to track that reality. As Leandro reminds me each week, if and when this service crosses the 1 hour threshold, accounts immediately drop off the live stream. So we appreciate that so many of you have other obligations and your time is precious. Knowing that, it is our goal to acknowledge your gift of spending it with us by making each minute as meaningful as we possibly can. All right, so all of this brings me to the second factor, which I believe has caused Christianity in the West to decline in the past 70 years. The first was failing to compete in a time of ever-increasing competition. The second is mistaking outdated social norms for the gospel. The show at my father's evangelical megachurch was professional and slick, but to my ears and eyes, the content was deplorable. The sermon was given by their former senior pastor, and it consisted primarily of what I think of as dog whistles and straight white grievance culture. He had, in my mind, the audacity to claim that middle-class suburban Minnesotans were facing the same kind of persecution as ancient Christian martyrs executed by the Romans when they, the suburban Minnesotans, get pushed back for speaking their own bigotries aloud. And to prove his point, he then engaged in hate speech against transgender individuals, denying their identity is valid. To my thinking, this man was not simply unchristian, this is antichrist. So many Christians have presented bigotry as gospel that a substantial percentage of non-Christians have come to fully equate Christianity with bigotry. And yet Jesus' example should be clear to anyone. In a famous story now found in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verses 2 through 11, we read, "Early in the morning, Jesus came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and making her stand before all of them, they said to him, 'Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?' They said this to test him so that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. When they kept questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, 'Let any among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her.' And once again he bent down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus straightened up and said to her, 'Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?' She said, 'No one, sir.' And Jesus said, 'Neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and from now on do not sin again.'" In this story, Jesus is faced with an actual biblical law about sex that calls for an honor killing. Although this is in the Bible, this was an unjust, bigoted law rooted in the local social norms of his time rather than in any ethical or moral teaching. Jesus himself did not enforce that law by taking it upon himself to police the private life of the woman in question. Rather, his example was to break that unjust, unrighteous biblical law. As disciples of Jesus, Christians are not to enforce local and temporal social norms as if they were eternal gospel truths, blindly condemning one another for the motes in their eyes. When we as Christians reject Jesus' example and take it upon ourselves to police each other's private lives, we sin against human dignity, and it's no wonder that seekers are repulsed. Unfortunately, this beam is not solely contained in the eyes of evangelicals. As a church, we too in Community of Christ still need to repent. Finally, I see a third and equally important factor in Christianity's demographic collapse, and that is its failure to maintain relevance. Christians have spent a lot of time using jargon terms that do not immediately appear to have meaning in the life outside of the church. People may wonder what we mean when we talk about atonement or salvation, sin, repentance, grace, works, gospel. But more likely, they do not know or wonder, and not only do they not know what we mean, they do not really care. However, this is not because everyone in the world has become a nihilist. People are still seeking meaning in their lives, whether they're aware of it or not. People long to be part of inclusive communities that extend beyond their individual families and their workplace. People want to work together in causes that improve the lives of others. and many people are dissatisfied because of a spiritual void in their lives, whether or not they perceive its cause. To reach these seekers, it is incumbent upon us as a church to transcend our own jargon, to translate the meaning of the enduring principles of the gospel so that they are relevant to our own time and place in history. When we do this, we enable people outside our existing circle of disciples to see why sacred community is so important that we have committed our lives to creating it and growing it. There is hope. This community that extends beyond the walls of any sanctuary is a sign of hope for renewal, but it is only one such sign among many. Today we are blessed to receive ministry from the 3 disciples who serve as the new Mission Center President team for Community of Christ here in Eastern Canada. They are here to share what they've learned and experienced in their first months of their calling and to offer us their visions of hope for church renewal going forward here in Canada and around the world.
Thank you, John. And thank you all for coming together today as the Congregation Beyond the Walls. I want to say hi to those of you who have already been building community on Facebook and on YouTube, on the chat, because this is how we build this community. I want to say hi to Glenda Whitehead. I want to say hi to Sharon Palmer. I want to say Yorana, à Charles Bellet. Merci à vous. I want to say, I think it's probably easier to see you on Facebook on my phone, right? Thank you, Lee, for your help today on Facebook. Bonjour, hello, Cecilia Hausman. Welcome also at Marietta Walden in Ridgecrest, California. Welcome, Jean-François, also aussi à Tahiti, bienvenue. Welcome also Claudia Butzma and Avon Mary. Welcome Avon and Marvin in Chilliwack. Welcome also once again to Providence Bay Congregation in Ontario. Welcome Fiona and the Muirs in Brampton, Ontario. Welcome Bill Mines. Sorry I couldn't join you this morning, Bill. And welcome Mark Shannon. Was good to see you yesterday. Welcome Sharon Solis. Welcome Raymond Ortiz. Remember Raymond's next week, right? Raymond, save the date. Raymond's confirmation next week. We're going to have the apostles Art Smith and also Locke Mackay with us. Welcome Frank. Thank you for the stars, Frank, that help us continue to offer this ministry. Welcome Martha Ham. Welcome also so many of you, and Carla and Eric Nielsen, 2 of our singers. Thank you for singing Be Still, about to premiere. And I want to say hi quickly to those of you on YouTube. Don't worry, I'm not going to play games while we are having a worship service. Steve, welcome. Welcome Eric Klingberg. Welcome Alexander Santos. Welcome Nancy Barnett. Welcome Vivian Betts, also in England. Welcome Jeannie Jacobson. Welcome Jean Gardner. Welcome Gordon Hodgins. Welcome Jake C. Welcome also to Ruth Armstrong and Barbara Crumpton. Welcome Wayne McLean. Okay, so many of you. So I'm going to keep saying hi to you on the chat. So please do say hi. And also thank you for your ministry of invitation. Every time you click like, every time you share this video, you're inviting someone to Christ, sharing hope today, helping us draw the circle wider and wider every week for that ministry, very important ministry of invitation and community building. I want to thank you. Te doy las gracias. Je vous remercie.
Thank Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Leandro. As Leandro mentioned, we will now have the premiere of hymn number 156, Be Still. I want to thank everyone who shares their voice each week with the Beyond the Walls Choir. This week I want to point out Vicki Mason, who joined the choir for the first time from Lincroft, New Jersey, and Leonard Warnock, who joined for the first time from Everett, Washington. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Zoe Karpowitz and Tane Wood, who have joined the hymn editing team in the last few weeks. We appreciate all of your efforts. And now as we continue our service, we go to Guelph, Ontario, the headquarters of Community of Christ in Canada, where Vonda Denboer, Don Dawson, and Mary Jean Belrose will offer us a word of hope.
In our first 150 days as Mission Center presidents, we have learned that we have a strong core of faithful, dedicated, mostly older persons who are committed to the church. But attendance is dwindling and donations are on a downward trend. We have a lot of members who regard church as important, especially for the sacraments, but who do not attend church services regularly. We also have a strong camping community, some of whom never step inside the doors of a church building except at camps. We have a growing body of disciples on a path of spiritual transformation that is happening in unique and exciting ways. And we have a variety of ways in which mission is realized. But a church that depends on an aging volunteer workforce to maintain and service half-empty buildings that lack 21st century technology and accessibility needs will soon run out of manpower and money. Sunday church attendance is no longer a societal norm. We compete with shopping, kids' sports tournaments, family time, hobbies, and work. In our research, we find millennials in particular prefer on-demand church, available when they are available. Volunteers prefer volunteering for a specific period of time for a specific project, not years without end. And we know many people in society criticize church as a hypocrisy because we see professed Christians engaging in behavior that is very unchristian. Lastly, there's a growing body of persons seeking spirituality rather than religion. We learned in the pandemic that we don't like isolation. We all need a community that accepts, values, appreciates, and shares with us. Fellowship, being together to share life's challenges, sharing a meal together, studying together, worshiping together is very important to many people. And it's what we do well. What may change is how that in-person connection evolves going forward. We are at a pivotal time in the life of the church. We sit on the cusp between what was and what is to be. It's important to value our history and traditions without continuing to look back in longing, but instead focus on moving forward. So we must ask the question, what lessons has the pandemic taught us about the importance of connection, community, and mission? We are a diverse community. Not everyone is on the same page. We are definitely a work in progress. What is essential to our individual witness is integrity. It's being aware that what we say and what we do must align with our enduring principles. It's acting in sync with the promptings of the divine. What is essential to our corporate presence is perseverance and flexibility in responding to changing needs. It's ensuring that every event, every program, and every gathering help us live out our mission. It's developing disciples who can respond to conflict and differences of opinion with kindness, compassion, and willingness to reconcile. We look at our camps as havens of learning for community building, disciple formation, and spiritual growth. If that is our goal, then every effort should be made to promote those goals within our activities. That we ask ourselves, how will this activity help us promote Christ, end needless suffering, promote peace, develop disciples, and engage in mission? Rather than a burden that consumes our time and resources, some of our buildings could become tools to help us in that outreach mission to those waiting in the shadows. Internet and social media and computers become tools that help us reach persons unable or unwilling to venture into churches. How we connect is less important than the fact that we do connect. We have a vision of growth if we realize our future is linked to Christ's mission of peace and justice. Mission endeavors that change lives, standing up for justice of people and the earth. Unless we develop new disciples through engaging in mission that strives to reduce poverty and suffering and that promotes peace for people in the planet, we will fail to connect with those persons for whom that is their primary focus. Dawn, where do you see plantings of hope in your community?
I found in life it is easy to have a knee-jerk reaction to what is happening around us. And I find it unfortunate that that is what some people have come to expect. The rapid response email, chat, or snap can give a quick response. The harder, slower response of stepping back, looking at the big picture, reflecting on a situation is one of hope. What is hope? Defined biblically, it is the strong and confident expectation. This does not need to take years of analyzing situations. In many cases, we have had years to do this. What we need to do now is to take those years of learning and growing to recognize that this as a foundation of what is yet to be. To stand firm in where we are and go forward realizing our potential. Kids Sunday School, Sunday morning worship hour, and all-day prayer meetings are the foundation to spring off of. They developed who we are, but we now must spring forward with our arms open to embrace those searching in their own ways. Small congregations have great opportunities to grow and change. You can use your morning services with a group of 6 to 12 to create ideas of new expression. In Providence Bay, a small step was to gather funds, approximately $240, to purchase Tim Hortons gift cards, which were sent out in encouragement cards to young community members away from home during midterms. Those young people are now searching for help, whether it be support during the loss of a loved one or assistance in an upcoming marriage. They had a foundation created by card of encouragement sent with love and care. They are creating their own circles of love and care based on a small action by a small congregation. They gave light and hope. This is only one example, but I want these small acts, which have been undertaken by so many small congregations, to overtake the negative ideas that only 6 to 12 people have no great strength. Our growth lies beyond the 1 hour on a Sunday morning. Outside in community, with events reaching all people, is where our growth will happen. Growth taken in small steps can equate to great hope. Does the event in the community have to be solely that of the congregation's making? In today's society, so many groups, whether they are congregations of different denominations, groups, or organizations, all feel a shortage of members and volunteers. A community event may appear in various forms. We are a people that believe in the blessings of community. Opening up to the opportunities that present themselves may seem overwhelming or unattainable, but we can shine our light to others using these events. Knitting prayer shawls and pneumonia vests, taking part in the pogo run, or collecting socks during Socktober for those that need them are examples of little things small groups are doing. On Manitoulin, the Special Olympics organization hosts an annual Bluegrass weekend in Providence Bay. As part of the weekend, they hold a Sunday morning gospel wrap-up. The Providence Bay congregation always cancel their usual Sunday service and attend the gospel service. This past year, I was asked to present the message during that service. It was a wonderful opportunity to speak to hundreds of people about the enduring principles of blessing and community. The community of bluegrass enthusiasts, the Special Olympics participants and coaches, and the community of Manitoulin all coming to an understanding of what they meant to each other. Events draw out people of all ages and backgrounds. Taking even a small part to share can build relationships that grow into unimaginable opportunities. Those small acts of mission really can make a difference. Because mission flows out of spiritual renewal, we have a vision of growth linked to developing disciples who are willing to be open to the leading of the Spirit in ways that perhaps are unfamiliar. Mary Jean, where do you see hope in developing disciples?
It may seem like a very dismal picture if we focus on our losses, our grief, and what once was. But I can only imagine how incredibly hopeless many people would have felt after Jesus' crucifixion. The image of a new world order was suddenly in jeopardy of being extinguished. But conversations continued. The Spirit moved among people who could not deny what they had seen, heard, or experienced. And the vision that had been established by Jesus found a way to live on. God's work could not be halted. We have been blessed by an amazing foundation in Community of Christ. It has served us well by nourishing our faith. We love this community. It's why many of us have continued to serve well past our best before date, the anticipated amount of time that our full and fresh service would be needed. I think of our brother Rod McLean, who, if he isn't in his 90s, is pushing it. Rod volunteered this summer to be on staff for youth camps. He leads a monthly book discussion with the evangelists, and he is promoting frequent and regular evangelist congregational ministry. Amazing! There are many others serving faithfully like Rod also. We know very well that we are not the only church that finds ourselves in such a time or place. What we have learned during the pandemic is that we can do church differently. Finding ourselves between a rock and a hard place has begun to open us to new possibilities. We have moved from next to no one meeting online to many of us learning the ropes of Zoom in our hunger to engage in meaningful connection. Diana Butler Bass, in Christianity After Religion, The End of Church and the Birth of a New Spiritual Awakening, states, "There is a mass exodus from the church in the United States, but interestingly enough, not away from spirituality. The number of Americans claiming to have mystical encounters with God has actually increased from 22% in 1962 to 48% in 2009. What might happen if we could connect with this growing group of people?" In the summer of 2020, Awakening Spirituality began to form a completely online gathering with a small group of women from Community of Christ, who might be thought of as the more mystical type. Various interest sessions were advertised with social media, and people began to show up. Participants are encouraged to share their thoughts, knowledge, experiences, and questions. After 2 years, we have had nearly 2,500 people worldwide express interest. And some of them have said that they have been searching for such a community as this. The focus is not on baptisms or membership in Community of Christ, but rather on supporting people on their quest to know their Creator. Fresh Expressions is a relatively new approach to church that began in the United Kingdom in the 1990s in response to a changing culture and a change in attitude towards church attendance and to a spiritual life. The goal was to reimagine church for this new environment while staying true to a missional and Christ-centered gospel. They work to inspire people in church to pay attention to the people around them, invite connection, and spark conversations that open up opportunities to foster dynamic faith communities. When we create a sense of belonging and community, build relationships, focus on pastoral care, and move away from forms and structures of church, we can change lives. Carrie Richards is currently modeling just that in Hamilton. He has been working to gather members from Community of Christ, some of whom have been on the fringes, and also making connections with former Creating Connection participants in the area. He said it's a process of baby steps and lots of discernment about who and how to connect with people. They're using space in a hotel where they host in-person events, including interactive, meaningful services that are very different from our usual hymn sandwich, but are very relevant. A regular community meal brings all parties together. There have been many opportunities for blessings of wholeness, better known to us as administrations. If you know of someone in the area of Brantford, Hamilton, or Niagara Falls, please get in touch with us so that we can pass along the information to Carrie. You can look forward to learning more about this exciting project in our Canada East Mission Conference booklet coming soon. We are in no way suggesting that all congregations must pivot to new manner of being or doing church. There is room for many forms, and we all have different gifts. These few examples of ministry and many others that you can search out online do provide hope. If our purpose is to keep this church alive, perhaps we will need to re-examine our motive. It's not about benefiting the church. As David Mayle states, people are not targets to get into church, but creatures beloved by the Creator. If we're honest with ourselves, it's true that we don't want our church to die because it has had deep meaning for us. And if that's the case, then why wouldn't we want to share that with others? We see fewer buildings and more mission in the future, moving outside of our gathering places to meet people where they are. We see God leading us beyond the horizon. We see hope in the lives of people within our church and beyond our walls. Together, we can journey in trust, assured that the great and marvelous work is for this time and for all time. Vonda, what do you think is needed in Community of Christ Canada East Mission for the journey ahead?
Well, our vision of hope relies on your willingness to be the church, to bring the gospel of a loving God just crazy enough to love the downtrodden, discouraged, and hopeless souls in need. To be successful, we need to develop more communities of people willing to serve together in mission projects that change lives. Communities of people who want to serve to reduce needless suffering. Communities of people who want to serve to promote peace. We need to invite more and apologize less for being a small church who strives to be a peace church. We need to be courageous to confront the trends of violence, hatred, prejudice, and discrimination in our increasingly multicultural society. Doctrine and Covenants 162 7a says, "There are many lives waiting to hear the redeeming words of the gospel, or to be lifted from hopelessness by the hands of loving servants." Our growth is dependent on love. Love that transforms our discipleship into action. Love that is contagious. Love in action that reflects Jesus' mission of peace and justice. May we live the words of the song, "Love is a flag flying high from the castle of my heart. So let it fly in the sky. Let the whole world know. Let the whole world know that the King is in residence there." We are called to become emissaries of peace and justice, love and reconciliation. Temple people with hearts dedicated to living the gospel. We are told we will become who we are called to be if we focus on living in sacred community rather than our fear of transformation. Our hope is in you, that we may heed that call to step out in faith and become who we are called to be.
Thank you, Vonda, Mary Jean, and Dawn. And now from Guelph, back to Toronto. We worry about the future. Worrying drains our energy without solving any problems. Hope is also concerned about the future, but hope renews our energy and can bring healing to mind, body, and our communities. Our fear, our habits, our biases, and our ignorance often lead us to find comfort in false, naive, and unrealistic hope. But true hope is divine. Hope brings us closer to God. Hope is trusting God so that we can be still, which also means let go. And with renewed peace of mind, begin to expect positive outcomes when challenge looms. Now, this doesn't mean that God has a detailed, mysterious plan beyond our comprehension and that we are like actors in a play that's already written. God counts on our active participation in all processes of renewal. The ones that heal and bring peace to ourselves, the ones that heal and bring peace to others, and the ones that heal and bring peace to our planet. So now let us be still. Let go of our concerns. Have hope and know that I am God. Now breathe deeply. Breathing in, deeply breathing out slowly, but very gently. Always with each exhalation, breathing out even more slowly. And if you can, sit upright. Don't slouch on your chair if you want to be awake for this. But relax your shoulders and your face. Allow your hands to rest and breathe in, dwelling in the present. Breathe out, letting go of everything else. And for a few minutes, let go of worrying. Let go of doing. Let go of judging. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still, let go of your concerns, and know that I am God." Continue breathing intentionally as you consider our first mission initiative. Invite people to Christ. Breathe in and out and make it a mantra. Invite people to Christ as you breathe in and as you breathe out. It's not a command, but something to meditatively ponder about. Invite people to Christ flows with your breath, and now is with your breath at the center of your awareness. Notice how you feel as your mind becomes one with this phrase, invite people to Christ. It's okay if there's a mix of feelings, emotions, thoughts, even memories that arise. Let them come to mind gently. Do not dwell on them, do not push them away. But open your comprehension to the message they bring. Is inviting people to Christ the same as inviting people to the Sunday morning worship service at your congregation? The invitation is to share the constant outpouring of joy, hope, love, and peace of God. Breathe. And begin by inviting yourself to Christ. Open your mind and body to receive divine joy, hope, love, and peace, one breath at a time. And notice if any resistance arises. What might be preventing you from freely accepting this invitation, this gift? Be still. Let go. Have hope. And know that I am God. Continue breathing intentionally. And now extend this invitation to others. Consider times when you invited someone to Christ. Not just to come to the church building, but to share divine joy, hope, love, and peace. If nothing comes to mind, think of someone who you would like to invite to Christ. Breathe in and out with this person in mind. Feel connected to them in spirit. And extend the invitation to share divine joy, hope, love, peace. And be still. Let go. Have hope. And know that I am God. Finally, as you continue breathing intentionally, consider the many challenges our world faces today. Consider those who hope the war ends. Those who hope they have enough to eat today. Those who hope they heal. Those who hope they find someone to love and someone who loves them. Those who hope the pain and suffering ends. Breathe in and out with those who suffer in mind for a few breaths. Feel the connection to them in the Spirit. And now extend the invitation to share divine joy, hope, love, and peace to them. Be still. Let go of your concerns. Have hope. Know that I am God.
Thank you, Leandro. Thank you, Mike. As we conclude our service, I invite you to sing one more time with the Beyond the Walls Choir, hymn number 552, We Are Companions on the Journey.
We are companions on the journey, breaking bread and sharing life. And in the love we bear is the hope we share. For we believe in the love of our God. We believe in the love of our God. No longer strangers to each other, no longer strangers in God's house. We are fed and we are nourished by the strength of those who care, by the strength of those who care. We are companions on the journey, breaking bread and sharing life. And in the love we bear is the hope we share. For we believe in the love of our God. We believe in the love of our God. We have been gifted with each other, and we are called by the word of the Lord to act with justice, to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with our God, to walk humbly with our God. We are companions on the journey, breaking bread and sharing life. And in the love we bear is the hope we share. For we believe in the love of our God. We believe in the love of our God.
We are companions on this journey, life's pilgrimage. We acknowledge that there is more than one meaningful path to our common source of truth. As we journey together as a church and as a people, may we learn from our past and jettison the baggage which holds us back. Let us be truly invitational so that all seekers will feel welcome to walk with us, whether it be to their journey's end or simply for a time before they then move on a different path which is their own. As you go forth from this service, remember that as a sacred community, we have been gifted with each other, and we are called by the word of the Lord to act with justice, to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with our God. Amen. Stay with us after the postlude as I will be talking to our Mission Center presidents.
Thanks, everyone. And John was concerned this was going to be a short service.
I even said, Leandro reminds me each week that we're supposed to only go to 1 hour, and yet I'm totally to blame this week. I talked too long. I couldn't help it. I had a lot to say, but anyway, I appreciate everyone who shares their time with us by giving their time to be on the walls and being with us for worship. And I want to thank our Mission Center President team here in Canada East for making yourselves available to our global community and to sharing with us your visions of hope newly into your term, your new administration. And we are all aware that they're especially coming out of COVID, that this is a time of crisis and struggle and so forth. But nevertheless, one of the things I found very hopeful is that you each were able to talk about things that can be done by very small groups. So in other words, we don't have to have the amazing assets of a megachurch in order to be able to translate mission to meaning in our lives. And so I guess, Don, I want to start with you because you gave several examples, and Providence Bay, your congregation there on Manitoulin Island, a historic center of Community of Christ in Canada. And you were all with us today, and it's so wonderful to welcome you and your congregation to the service.
Well, thank you. It was a joy for us to be able to be with you here this Sunday. Yes, our whole congregation was there. I think there was 10 of us today. So it was a good juke, and they enjoyed being online with you as well.
Well, and I really love how your congregation has focused on, let's say, two different strategies that, well, maybe more, but two that I kind of gleaned. One, being able to take actions that are small actions that could potentially have big ripple effects, and then the other, recognizing what only a small group can only do so much, and that's why we reach out and we make alliances and we work with other volunteer organizations to further what our own individual mission accomplish.
Yes, Providence Bay is a very small town, a very small community on Manitoulin Island, but very much part of a bigger community. We have to remember that we are part of a community, and so when we are asked to be involved participants in all these other events, it's because we're reaching out to the greater community of Manitoulin, which, I mean, if people know, Manitoulin is the largest island, the fresh inland island, right, in the world. And so we are a big place, but very small communities. So we work together and enjoy each other's presence and have family value in each of our little communities together. We all understand each other and we try to help each other. So it's been, I think, 11 years that they've been doing the Bluegrass in the Country now.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have wanted to come and visit you and see the island and see the congregation. We're going to figure out how to make that happen because it's just such an amazing place. Like you say, the largest island in an inland island, right?
Yep,
so in other words, one that's not on an ocean, but on an internal, an internal sea like Huron. And also, though, I mean, it's been a center in the Community of Christ and the reorganization for over a century, as where there were once just congregations dotting the whole island that you've consolidated to.
Yeah, there used to be 5 congregations across the island. And unfortunately, we are down to 1 in Providence Bay, but we certainly make ourselves known across the island. And we still have families from across the island that recognize this is their home church and reach out to us for various activities in their lives and how we can support them and help them.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again for doing all of that and also sharing with it that so that those of us who are in small congregations, locally, we're a very small congregation here in Toronto as well. We have members all around the world, but we don't have as many that are in driving distance. And so we feel that same need to connect and to gather with others. Certainly like when we have an in-person service like yesterday with the baby blessing.
Well, we have just one more thing about the universities and colleges. There is no university or college on Manitoulin Island.
Yeah.
A couple of the different reserves have offshoot offices. and have some spaces for learning. But most of the young people here that want to have continuing education leave home. And the closest would be Sudbury, which driving would be about 2.5 hours away from us. So that's why we felt it was so important here to be able to maintain that connection with young people to their roots, and helping them when they are in their dorms or in their apartments and feeling stress away from home, that they can feel connected. And anybody, any congregation can do that.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And a fantastic idea for folks to be doing, to keep connected with their young people as they go off into other places and so forth. And they know that they're still part of a community.
Yeah.
Mary Jean, I want to thank you as well. You have helped us so much in Beyond the Walls, and you are helping out so many different places, as you've mentioned here, helping out with this ministry that began with a group of women in Eastern Canada that has expanded so far in terms of awakening spirituality. And also, one of the things that I was very intrigued by as you were describing this, you were talking about this idea of translating things that are sacred in our tradition in new ways, I think, that are understandable outside of our circle, outside of our jargon. So for example, you were talking about the sacrament of administration as an inclusive spiritual practice, which I think you were calling blessings of wholeness. And I wonder if you might tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's really just administration, a prayer of administration, what we call prayer of administration, or a prayer for the sick, or, it's a blessing for the person in need. So it really just means that an elder or two are placing their hands upon someone's head and just offering a prayer on their behalf for whatever their need is, whether it's a physical need or whether it's an emotional or a spiritual need. And it's just a different name for the very same thing. And, we tend to get so bogged down by our forms that they have to be done in a certain way. But in my mind, I think God, can get through those kinds of barriers that we create, that say that it has to be done just so in order for God to be able to reach us. But, I don't think so. I think God is much bigger than that. So.
Well, I love it because actually, this has been in my life many times. I have a testimony of this sacrament when people have asked for, a lot of times it's like you say, a spiritual blessing in a time of need in their life, and being there and having the laying on of hands, showing the person is part of a sacred community of love in that way. And yet, in some ways, our let's say our jargon for the sacrament, why we're calling it administration, is very far removed maybe from even what it really is. And so I love this phrase, blessing of wholeness. It very much resonated because again, we're not trying to be literalistic in terms of we use medicine. This is not a replacement for going to the doctor and all these sorts of things, but rather I think, as Roger's explained in even his interpretation of Jesus's healings, that this is about spiritual wholeness, not necessarily a physical healing.
Absolutely. There's so many needs, and we all have need for blessings. So there are many opportunities for these blessings of wholeness to be given. So, yeah. And lots of people have had remarkable testimonies from these blessings of wholeness or administrations, whatever you want to call them. And, it's just been amazing to hear some of those stories. Yeah.
Well, thank you for, I agree with you entirely that there's always new ways when we think of the essence of a practice, there's always new ways they can be experienced. All of us have as an experience. We had never done communion simultaneously from multiple locations over the internet like this. But obviously that's been such a blessing that those rule changes, in our church anyway, happened 6 months before the pandemic, when it has been so vital when we weren't able to meet together in person.
Yeah, I think we need to have our minds opened. We need to be looking at all the things that have blessed us in this community of faith, and then just, try and understand, like, how else might that be presented for others out there beyond our walls that don't understand these technical terms that we use, or our practices that we use. What are the ways that we can reach those people meaningfully and bless them, with the Spirit, reach that Spirit out to them?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, there's lots of opportunities.
And Vanda, even though, I think that you kind of took the task here in terms of the service of introducing the idea and giving the conclusion rather than giving us as many examples, I know that your congregation, in concert with other congregations, has done a bunch of different invitational activities, one of which I mentioned those 3 children that we've had baby blessings for. One of our children, Faith Shannon, has been participating in the Children's Peace online book club. And I know that your congregation, along with, I think, Guelph, sponsored that. Isn't that right?
Yes, in the middle of the pandemic, I worked with Amy Unra, and we put together a Children's Peace Book Club, and it was amazing. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We borrowed from other parts of North America that was doing a similar ministry. But just connecting with the little kids and reading these hopeful stories, and stories that were teaching peace in a way that was unique and soft and relatable to children. So, and I firmly believe that we need to work with our children, because they are the ones that are going to help us lead the way to peace. So that was important. I've stepped back from that, but it's continuing on. And I do feel it's important that those kinds of things are made available to kids throughout the mission center or beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree entirely, and it's been such an amazing ministry. But I think that you also put your finger on one of the things that there may be a stopping point for so many people who might be feeling like, well, I can't do any of this, or my congregation is at its limit, it can't do anything. I think where you said we didn't reinvent the wheel. We took what other people have pioneered, and others we saw, oh, this is working in the States, and so we could do this ourselves. This is a kind of invitation. This is a kind of mission. This is a way we could, in our small group, and provide a missional service that has reached beyond our own group without without breaking us, right? So in other words, I think that we have a lot of tendencies to say, oh no, we can't in the church, but I really appreciate your words of hope here, inviting everyone to say, well, wait a second, maybe we can.
Well, the interesting thing about that is I had been at a meeting, and we're in the middle of the pandemic, and I typically would lead a children's class at my congregation, and it was mostly boys, very active, so you had to be very creative as to how you connected with them. So at this meeting, what I said was, I'm concerned about the children. The adults are getting church through Zoom, but what about the children? Well, the interesting part about that was Kathy Baker was at that meeting, and she remembered that thought. Well, then a little while later, Kathy Baker is at another meeting hearing about a children's book peace club in another part of North America. So that connecting with one another and listening and hear where the opportunities are. So Kathy got back to me, and she also connected with Amy, and it all came together because a need was expressed, somebody listened and connected the dots, and then reconnected with the people that could make it happen. So, that was only 3 or 4 people, but we were able to make it happen because we listened and we responded.
Well, once again, I think that is something that everyone here who's listening and is with us, can hear and say, hey, I'm open to needs. In other words, I can be, if I think about it, there are needs abound, right? And those needs are actually also opportunities. And a lot of times maybe I say, oh, well, boy, I really wish independence would do this. I really wish World Church Headquarters would send me, this or that thing that I am missing. And then you forget about it, and then it doesn't happen, and so forth. Whereas, or even if you write and request, there's only so many people at headquarters, and they can only do so much. Whereas when you do this thing with a little bit of networking, you and Kathy and a couple and Amy and just a few people, what wonderful things can be accomplished.
Yeah.
Before we go with all of you, do you have any additional, let's say, pitches or tips to members across the Mission Center and beyond about how they might go about discerning mission opportunities, what they might be doing for congregational revitalization and all these kinds of things? I know that's open-ended, I'm sorry.
We've been working with congregations who've been, just really asking those kinds of questions. What can we do now with what we have? It seems that the resources are very limited, and that they've got these buildings that are kind of like a noose around their neck. It's costing a lot of money to maintain. And so, they're now a little bit between a rock and a hard place and needing to discern what to do next, how to be church, how to do church in these changing times. And so just this week, actually, I took some time with the Owen Sound congregation, or invited the Owen Sound congregation, who are in this process, to engage in a prayer walk with me in downtown Owen Sound. And it turned out that it was just myself and Kathy Atkinson who walked the streets in downtown Owen Sound, and just walked with our eyes wide open to see, what are some of the needs there, or what's happening in downtown. And we had the most amazing afternoon. We first encountered a person sitting on the street asking for, a toonie. So we dug deep into our purses and each found a toonie and offered it to him. And we had this greatest smile on his face. He was just so grateful just for that little gift. And then we talked to a few other people who, really gave us inspiration and hope, and, were interested in what we were doing as well. And so we just see so many opportunities there. And I think that's an important thing to do for people in their own communities, to just take a look around, find out who is doing what out there in the community, find out what the needs are out there. There are some amazing groups of people, small groups, who perhaps need our help too. They may be struggling as well with how to get their voices out there and their work out there. So yeah, take a look around.
Well, absolutely. That's a great idea. And I'm really glad that worked out that way, and that you had that wonderful result. Even if, maybe, and even if you didn't get the whole congregation to go, it was still very worthwhile. This is like when Leandro began the meditations, he committed, here, the in-person meditation service, he committed, well, I'm just going to do this because I need to spend some time in the spiritual practice. And if everyone shows up and we have a whole meditation group, that's great. And if everybody doesn't show up and that's me doing it, I'm committed to doing it because this is something I also want to do in community, but also in my own spiritual life.
Exactly. And we just had wonderful conversation come out of just Kathy and I walking the streets, and we shared, some pictures of, some of the things that we saw. And yeah, it's just been great to be able to communicate with each other through email about what we saw. Yeah.
We are also going to be hosting the Canada East Mission Center Conference Worship Service. And I wonder if you have anything that we should all be looking forward to, or if we're for those of the people here who are in the Mission Center, including members of Beyond the Walls, who are, if you are an official member of Beyond the Walls or Toronto, it doesn't matter where you live, you're part of the Canada East Mission Center. If there's anything you want to highlight about the upcoming conference. Anyone in particular? I don't know, Vonda, you're unmuted.
Well, it's a regular conference, so there potentially is legislation that could come forward. we're looking forward to it, but we're also a little bit anxious because this is the first one that we've really had to do. We are looking at bringing forth legislation in relation to moving from a delegate conference to a member conference.
Wow.
So that information will be coming out probably this week with the link to that. So we're encouraging people to participate in the pre-legislative sessions to dialogue. What's the rationale behind that? Why do you see that as something of value? So that would be one thing that we would encourage people to do. We're looking forward to 2023, where we hope to be able to be in person. We'll see. We certainly hope for that. So.
Absolutely. Boy, that's an exciting idea. You maybe already sent it out, but I just hadn't heard it before. So I'm just very excited about the idea of, having everybody in the Mission Center who's a member just be able to vote in the meeting, as opposed to having congregations elect delegates and send delegates in. That's a neat idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don, were you going to say?
I was going to say that one of the other things we're doing at the before the conference class in the afternoon, in the morning, we are having sessions, and there is going to be a session about missions in action, so that you can come online and brainstorm with other congregations and hear what each of the different congregations are doing in these in their small groups that are making a big impact in the communities in which they live in. So we're hoping to have these different sessions in the morning before the actual meeting person starts in the afternoon.
Fantastic.
And that's mission in action, not missing in action. Right?
Sorry, no, mission in action. Sorry.
No, you didn't say that. Okay. I'm just pointing that out.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, let's have that be the final word. We want mission in action, and we don't want to be missing in action. Everyone here is a disciple, and we all are called to move the mission initiatives forward. So thank you again. Let's all wave, and I appreciate it so much. What a wonderful service.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.